we put our personal lives in the music for sure, but this is a whole different level of examination and exposure that we've never had before, any of us in our lives, really. So yeah, it's kind of scary, but I tried to come at it with as much honesty as I could muster, and that gives me some not solitude, but some kind of at least confidence that we didn't shy away from the stuff that was difficult.
What's up, everybody? It's Tiffy at ghostcultmag.com. I am joined for another round of interviews. This is our third interview, second with you, but Ken, a failure. How are you doing, man?
Good, good, real good.
Just an absolute pleasure to talk to you. We are on the eve of the release of your documentary about the band. First and foremost, congratulations on this thing. I think anything in this day and age to put together something so comprehensive and almost like a memoir. I marvel at people who write books, and it's the same thing with documentary films. I think it's a real labor of love. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. A lot different than making music, and similar creative outlet, but different end result and a different journey in a lot of ways. So first and foremost, thank you for this and congratulations.
I appreciate that. I really do. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's relevant to say that it is warts and all. And I think that's the number one thing that I took away from this. I think it's no holds barred. That everybody in the band is under a microscope, good, bad, beautiful, horrible, wonderful, just like life. And did you have any trepidation about making this thing like a completely, soul bearing experience for everybody in the band? Was there any second thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely had some reservations. Kind of still have them now in terms of just like people are going to see it starting tomorrow, and it's freaky, because the music. I mean, we put our personal lives in the music for sure, but this is a whole different level of examination and exposure that we've never had before, any of us in our lives, really. So yeah, it's kind of scary, but I tried to come at it with as much honesty as I could muster, and that gives me some not solitude, but some kind of at least confidence that we didn't shy away from the stuff that was difficult.
Right on. But again, not easy to do, not natural to do. It's probably against your own instincts to open up and share things that probably very few people outside the band ever knew. Every little minute detail is uncovered. Every Time You Lose Your Mind is the name of the film, by the way, and it's going to be on Hulu and Disney Plus starting June 27th. We're recording this right before that, but yeah, it's really astounding. I felt very lucky to watch it a few times and really take it in. I have been a fan, as you know, we've talked before. We've had a few interviews. I have been a fan of the band from the beginning. I think I had a song on a CMJ compilation, so kind of early days. I used to go
Very early days,
before I
yeah.
was when I still had bands, and now I'm back doing music again for the first time in a long time. I don't know why, but I'm doing it. And I remember like my early formative band days in New York City. I live in California now. I would get those CMJ compilations and then immediately try to find everything I could. There was no internet. There was no streaming. You had to buy a whole record. You didn't know what it sounded like unless you were lucky to have a place like a Tower Records that had or Virgin Megastore with the listening booths. Right? You
Yeah.
almost never got to hear a whole record before it came out unless you worked in radio or the media. So this is way before I did any of that. So just been a big fan for the whole journey. And I learned things about the band as an exhaustive nerd of music. I learned things I never knew about the
Mm.
arc of the band. So I felt like a fan of the band will get a lot out of it. A newcomer to the band, and you talked during the course of the film about sort of a new era of discovery for the band, which I think is wonderful. and amazing and necessary for things to live on in art. But yeah, just it must be mind blowing to. I'm glad your recall is so good, and some of this stuff was recorded. Like, but also like there's a lot of great recollections from everybody in the band, also about kind of every little ladder step of the way, despite everything. It's very must be very gratifying to be able to document all these things.
Yeah, I think it puts I think we wanted to kind of clarify, because there were some, a certain amount of writing about the band's troubles before the doc, and now, not that they were horribly off base or anything, but just to kind of put a more personal spin on it, and a more personal kind of context, what it was like to be in the band when we were going through all of that stuff. It felt good in a way to kind of get it off our chests. So yeah, I think that's part of the reason why we actually did it.
Right on. There are many guests in the documentary. Sometimes that's, what people say about you is almost as important to as what the narrative you tell yourself. And it's actually pretty interesting. Something that's not in the film, of course, like the relationship between Failure and getting to open for Tool on 5 tours was a big boost to the band, especially around the third record. But actually, in an interview that Maynard James Keenan did with Rick Beato, also in the film, earlier this year, he was asked by Rick, like, were there bands from the scene Tool was in, Tool and Rage Against the Machine in that LA era, like what are the bands that should have been bigger? And he said Failure, number one. So
Mhm.
I know that he's always been a supporter, and those guys are friends and fans as well. But um, it's got to be gratifying to get people like Haley Williams of Paramore and Tommy Lee, people who are not just themselves legends or famous people, but other people in your circle who are fans and friends. It's not just everybody gushing on you. They gave, very candid answers about their love for the band and why the band is important to them. And I think that's
Mhm.
very special. You don't often see that even in the best documentaries.
Yeah, I that's one of the reasons I decided to do the doc, because it was originally started by a couple other people who captured a few of the interviews between 2015 and 2020. And when I saw those interviews, it surprised me. It surprised me who they got. I mean, I knew somewhat that some of these people were, into the band, but I had no idea that they had really spent that much time thinking about it, or even wanted to go on camera to talk about the band. And when I saw that, I thought, that's kind of that could be an interesting angle to the film. It's just like this kind of weird, eclectic mix of celebrities, I guess, other musicians, other performers, talking about a band. Because the first thing that hit me when I saw that first group of interviews was like, I wonder if Margaret Cho and Tommy Lee have been in the same movie before.
Amazing.
Yeah, so that was definitely a, a very, it was kind of emotional, honestly, watching some of those interviews for the first time.
Right on. And Tommy, close on. Good call. And we've all seen much of Tommy lately, and we're good. But we're good, bro. Yeah, I want to hear him talk about music and not see any of the body parts. But so many jokes come to mind. But yeah, it's just such a really great look into the band, and I love the care that every stage is taken with. And I think it's, obviously it's hard not to talk about Albini just passed away. It sucks so bad that we're losing a lot of our heroes young. And I know is, maybe not contentious is not the right word, but, not the results you wanted, right, from the first record. And then, obviously I think that led the band to this path where everybody in the band has also gone into production and studio work, and sort of the meticulous nature you probably already always had as artists has carried over into production. And I think that's, I think one of the things that's had equal footing with the artistry and the music of the band is the production and the talent of all of y'all. And not easy. I know Steve's obviously his bona fides are untouchable, but as many people had beef with him also. And he himself had beef with his own work, even. He had a strange relationship with the work itself. He's a very unique and special person as a producer. So, what did you take away from that first experience that was positive? And did you, maybe some of it carried over with you, even if you didn't love the way the first record came out?
Well, just in general, I learned a lot of recording techniques working with them because we were there for almost a month, and just working with someone. I'd never gotten to work with someone who had made so many records and had actual, studio experience and was confident and, felt like he was knew what he was doing. So that part was great, and that informed me. But yeah, I think as we were getting deeper into the record, I think our vision for what could be happening in terms of techniques and production ideas were getting somewhat muted by his techniques and his ideas about recording, which were, looking back on it now, I was just watching some of the those sections of the 8 millimeter video handy cam that we had, and just kind of realizing, that actually our first drummer, Robert, and Steve were kind of more aligned philosophically about how to approach recording a rock band in a studio. I think Greg and I kind of felt like it was, no, there were no rules, and you could use the studio as an instrument in and of itself, and overdubs weren't, something to be looked down upon, or we didn't see making records as like this kind of pure capturing of the band live. We thought, the studio was, and a lot of our favorite records use the studio pretty extensively to do all sorts of sound effects and soundscapes, and it was just, we were hoping for a bit more freer environment, but yeah, and maybe ultimately that experience kind of, we kind of learned about each other, that, like Robert was kind of coming at it from a different place, and maybe that led ultimately to him to want to leave the band.
Right on.
um
Bad times with drummers until Kelly. Like
well,
tough to keep
yeah,
on.
yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, it was kind of subtle though, because we were getting some performances that we liked, and it definitely sounded like us. I just think we were hoping to explore things a little bit deeper, and that didn't really happen. And what was so interesting to me is that Steve's reflecting on it now, or last year, or actually probably 2 years ago when we interviewed him, was really interesting, because I didn't know what his take on it was going to be, but he kind of, he had no problem looking back on some of his decisions and going, yeah, maybe that wasn't the right thing to do at that point. So it was an interesting experience for sure.
And that was probably the only time as a band you actually needed somebody to guide the process a little bit differently. Maybe if Albini had produced the second record and someone else had done the first, it would have been a different arc. But again, maybe things wouldn't have played out the way they did. It's hard to know. Also, I think it's very fair to say the band has experienced every high and low the old guard music industry had, and now you're here still, and put out two records in the current, streaming era, for better or worse. A lot of just not great experiences, good, bad, or otherwise. Some great experiences, with the record, with the business. Unfortunately, it's the music business. It's not the music friendship, as I'm fond of saying. And so,
Yeah.
you learn a lot of tough lessons. Would you say that, despite how universally loved Fantastic Planet is, was that just like the hardest couple of years of your life?
Well, definitely after it was done was very hard, because right as we were finishing it, the label that we were signed to at the time, Slash Records, told us that they were selling in the process of selling the whole label to another party, and including our catalog and the current record that we had just finished. And which it doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing, except that the music business moves kind of slow sometimes. So we finished that record in early 95, I think, and it didn't come out until late 96. So that was a very tough time, because we had really put everything into it. We kind of knew that if something didn't change in terms of where we were in the business environment, we probably weren't going to get a fourth record. So not that inspired us to make a more commercial record. It just we just wanted to make something really good so that if we went out with our heads held high, basically. The problems with drugs, which had definitely crept in during the making of the record. Once we got that news that it we don't know when it's going to come out, if it's ever going to come out. That put us all in a bit of a tailspin mentally. I was actually ending my relationship with heroin around that time, so I kind of escaped somewhat, but did get very depressed and didn't know what to do. And people kept saying, "Well, just wait it out. This record's good. It'll find a home." And eventually it did. But by the time it did, Greg's addiction had really taken a very dark turn. And so, yeah, that the year and a half we spent touring on it was very bittersweet, because we all felt like it was the best musical work we had done, and yet we were just barely treading water as people.
I wonder if the record had come right out when it should have, air quotes. Maybe the band would have had a different arc. But it's again, it's hard to know. We can all
It's hard to know, and part of me thinks, because we were, dealing with addiction pretty heavily, even at the end of finishing the record, it might not have been a good thing if that record would have blown up right then.
right. It would have been a much more public
Part,
spotlight on the band.
yeah, well, if your dreams come true if your dreams come true and you're really messed up on drugs, it can be a bad combo.
Right on. And not to mention, if you've ever been on drugs or alcohol, and then you get sober and clean, and you're around people who aren't, it's very difficult to maintain the friendship or any allyship. It's really hard. So I know
Yeah.
personally how that goes. I think one of the best stories in that I don't think I really had an appreciation for was the sort of probably most people outside the band don't know about the mending of the friendships. I think that's more important to me than the band coming back for Maynard's Cinquanta 50th birthday party celebration and the El Rey show reunion, which we were at actually and covered, and which I felt like I couldn't even believe it was happening when I got the press release about it. But I think the mending of the friendships is a very special and important thing that a lot of times that doesn't get to happen. So the fact that we have music on top of it is very lucky. But I think that it's really nice that everybody got to get to a place where you could reconnect and just be friends like it was in the beginning. Music is always a thing that brings us together, but sometimes pulls us apart too. So I think a lot of people will be, it's a very nice lift to the film, to the heaviness of all the things. Here's this beautiful little story in here about, the friendships getting fixed first. And I think that's very nice.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't have happened otherwise, because it's the work that we do together is pretty intense, and you got to be willing to play things musically or do things musically that you're unsure of in front of your peers. And if you're not on good terms with that peer, you're just not going to express yourself. And so, yeah, that was that rekindling of the friendship between Greg and I actually took several years. It wasn't just like a few months. It was several years, bonding over the fact that we had kids around the same age, and we were kind of freaked out as new parents, and kind of like sharing stories like, is it okay if this happens? And and that just opened the gate eventually to, playing, sitting down with guitars and just messing around. And so it was very organic, and I couldn't really see it happening any other way, because it would have just felt forced.
Right. And then yeah, I love the comment I think Greg says in the film is like, I didn't even think like once the El Rey show happened, okay, now we're kind of back and we kind of have to see the Greg or Kelly was like, now we're back and we kind of have to stay together now somehow.
Yeah,
So I thought that
yeah.
was really cool. I'm sorry if I'm misremembering. I only watched it twice
No,
last night,
yeah,
but
that was Greg. Yeah.
yeah, it's Greg. Thank you. And think what you see what you're thinking at 3 in the morning watching these things. And Anywho, yeah, just I love that that was like the impetus to move things forward. I think The Heart is a Monster is great. It was a great comeback. Was a it seems like a lifetime ago. It's only 10 years ago, and it seems like forever ago. And you said you kind of had to, figure out how to work together. Certain things fit right back together. And Kelly was like, "Oh, does this even? I have to listen to this. And what if I hate it? Like, I have to love it, or I didn't want to do. Is it worth doing?" And all these emotions. The whole band goes through this range of emotions, and then comes out with this great record. And I think, unfortunately, despite the pandemic, I think Wild Type Droid was also incredible, actually. And we had it on a list. We did like a feature last year on noise rock music and the legends of noise rock, and on maybe some unheralded and some you should know, and of course Failure is in there. And so Wild Type Droid had just come out at that time, and so just prior. So yeah, what a phenomenal comeback story for all of you. But yeah, that difference between the two records, I feel like might be safe to say for me as a listener that Wild Type Droid's a little more comfortable as a record. Like, it's definitely they're both great Failure records, but I feel like Wild Type Droid is what I would expect this century's Failure to sound like.
Hmm. Well, I think we were very relaxed in our shoes by the time we got to that third reboot record. We had made two records, and maybe we weren't putting as much pressure on ourselves to live up to Fantastic Planet. We were just kind of like, we're together now, and let's make a new record and see what comes of it. So there maybe a little less editorial mindset when we were making it, and it's shorter too. We wanted to kind of cast aside this whole idea of having to make like hour-long plus records, which they do take a lot longer to make. And why not shorten the time between records and just kind of have a little bit more fun with it?
Right on. I'm still an album lover and listener. I love a whole album. I don't want to repeat my steps in a past interview, but we talked about our mutual love of different bands growing up, similar. And I love a beautifully constructed whole album. I'm still into sequencing. I love segues and interludes, and Pink Floyd is still my North Star musically in a lot of ways, despite the metalhead that everybody knows me to be. But I wonder what the place of the album will continue to be in this weirdo world, bizarro world of streaming and AI music and 2-minute songs and things, and 30-minute albums. Is it an album? Is it an EP? What is the difference? So I love that you guys still want to make whole albums. I hope there will be another Failure full album, even if it's a little shorter and not 17 songs. Maybe 12 is enough, or 7 or 9 is sometimes enough for Tool. So that's fine. But it's such a strange world we're in, where music has, to me, it's still as important as ever. But to some people, it's just like the background. It's what they
Hmm.
listen to at the laundromat or the shopping mall, and I don't love that. I think that's not great what we've done. We didn't do it, but
Yeah, it's hard to know where it's going to go. Sometimes there's backlashes. It's, against what is the current most popular formatting of music. For us, it's just, we just like albums. We just love the idea of sequencing, and actually, since we generally write and record as one process, we're thinking about sequencing very early on. Like, where do you see this fitting in an album sequence? Well, this would probably be towards the end, or so we've just never been like single song oriented band. It's all about the kind of tapestry that the songs make together. But having said that, I do think that we're kind of on a, see, like when we made Fantastic Planet, there were no bands that were our size were pressing vinyl. Like, the labels were just like, vinyl's dead. There's no point. It's CDs, and maybe cassettes were also kind of starting to go out of fashion. And CDs have like 70 minutes of bass on them. And it's just so interesting because you look at the history of the album and how it changed, from like a 40-minute to a 70-minute limitation. And I feel like, because we've done so well in the vinyl world with our new albums and our old albums, I'm more people stream our music than listen to it on vinyl for sure. But because people are buying physical and supporting the band in such a huge way, we just can't help but be influenced by that. And I think, and we've been thinking about and going back to older records that have been important to us, and just kind of realizing the craft that used to go into making a succinct and beautiful 40-minute record or 35-minute record. And so we're deep into that right now.
Oh, I love hearing that. That's amazing. That was my my follow up question is can we, I know everybody is busy doing things and producing side projects, touring, all the things, studio work, but I would love to get another failure record. I think it would be like the medicine
Oh,
we need right now is a new one. No pressure.
there's one in the works.
All
There's
right.
definitely one in the works.
I had a feeling, but I think this film stands on its own. The live album also was great, and I wanted to shout you out for the remastered box set because I think also in the bigger music industry world, there's a lot of stuff that's been lost. We all know about changes in studio work, archival things. I don't think people realize that for a long time, a lot of vinyl was mastered off of CDs, and not from original tapes or DATs. I'm sure I made one of the last albums ever on DAT, by the way, with my thrash band in the early 2000s,
Mm.
and and that was a whole ass thing. But I really think that remastered box set was timing and also good for the band to do. Also, to get your final here's our final presentation of this early work for fans and put it in a wonderful package for people. Again, that's built for nerds like me, and
Yeah. And us.
and yeah, and yourself, of course, as the artist, making it too. But I think also, streaming doesn't have to it doesn't have to be this be all and end all. And I try to tell
Mm.
that to people. And I think also like it's a search engine for music. If you see it as anything more than that, you're gonna feel a lot of angst and suffer because the system is not geared to pay artists. It really isn't, unfortunately. I do see some new things like Ampwall is a competitor Bandcamp that came along. I think they're pretty interesting, and sort of an open platform that doesn't charge a lot. And I think that would be useful for more competitors in that scene. But yeah, I don't know. You don't get to watch a whole movie before you buy it, or you go see it until it's on streaming later, a few months later, or a few weeks later. Sometimes if it's a bad movie, so things are changing. Technology, you can't be afraid of it. You always embraced it. The band always embraced it. And I'm very excited to see what the future of failure is past this film and for new music, hopefully in the next year. Just for a last question, because I love to end these with a wild card question, and I want were a film student and made this documentary. So, what is your favorite? Doesn't have to be music related, but what is your favorite documentary ever?
Oh, I'm not gonna. I don't know if I'm gonna remember the title, but it's the documentary that Francis Ford Coppola's wife made about Apocalypse Now. What was that called?
Hearts of Darkness.
Hearts of Darkness.
Yeah,
Hearts of Darkness. I love that documentary. It's so inspiring as a filmmaker, and she just captured everything, that the chaos of making that insane film. I love that. I've seen it at least 3 or 4 times.
fantastic. Again, no pun intended. Ken Andrews, Every Time You Lose Your Mind is streaming on Hulu and Disney Plus. Thank you so much for this film. Thank you so much for hanging out with us again. It's a real pleasure. And my best to you and all the guys. And we'll see you out there soon, I hope.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.